What's up, golfers, gearheads, and numbers nerds? I'm Josh Chervokas, and I'm coming here from Total Fit. And today, I'm super pumped because I get to do some shaft testing. Now, we just got in the brand new Acra Tour Z Red and Green Series shafts, in addition to a few more Fujikura Ventus VeloCore Plus SKUs that we want to add to our fitting matrix. But before we can add any shaft to the fitting matrix here at Total Fit, we first have to test them for both flex and profile. Now, we'll explain more about how we test for profile in a future video. For this one, we're going to just concentrate on how and why we measure for flex. So a bunch of you guys are probably wondering why we would go through the trouble to measure all these shafts for flex when they come from the manufacturer with a flex designation written right on the shaft. And that's because what these flex designations mean and why they're on the golf shaft is one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of golf. You see, there are no industry standards for flex. There are no agreed upon guidelines as to what a shaft needs to measure to be called a stiff, an extra stiff, or a regular. There's not even an agreed upon measuring system that all manufacturers use to measure these products. Because of this, you cannot use the markings on golf shafts to compare flex from one make and model of shaft to another make and model of shaft on the market. And quite frankly, that's not their intention. The reason those markings are on the shaft is to tell you that, say, a Ventus VeloCore Plus Black Stiff is stiffer than a Ventus VeloCore Plus Black Regular and softer than a Ventus VeloCore Plus Black Extra Stiff. But they don't tell us anything about how these shafts relate to each other and all the other shafts in the market. To figure that out, we're going to need to measure them all ourselves. So there are a couple different ways we can measure for flex. It's illustrated by our shaft deflection board and our auditor shaft analyzer. Now, although we do use our auditor shaft analyzer for all our critical measurements here at Total Fit, the deflection board is a really easy way to see flex. So to use the deflection board, we're going to add a load to the end of the shaft in the form of a weight and see how much that shaft bends. If a shaft bends more, it's obviously going to be more flexible, and if it bends less, it's going to be stiffer. The auditor shaft analyzer works in the exact opposite way. To use this, we're going to mount the shaft in the analyzer and apply a load to it. And here we deflect the shaft 3 centimeters. After deflecting the shaft 3 centimeters, we can read how much that shaft is resisting that bending. So this Acra Tour Z Red M4, aka Stiff, is coming in at 108 ounces of pressure when deflected 3 centimeters on our auditor shaft flex analyzer. Now, what does that mean? Well, now that we know what this shaft measures, we can compare it to all the other shafts that we've measured in our database and get a relative flex rating as compared to all the shafts in the marketplace. So for instance, this at 108 ounces of pressure is a really stout stiff. This is actually creeping into the bottom of what we would consider even the extra stiff range, which is why it's really important to measure all of these characteristics. Again, the markings on the shaft are not there to tell you the relative stiffness and how these shafts perform versus each other, but only there to tell you the difference between all the different available flexes in each shaft line. So why is it important that your club fitter understands the differences between all the shafts that they're handing you? Well, if they don't, you get in what we call a try and buy situation, where your fitter is just randomly handing you shafts, hoping one of them is going to work that magic. And while this can sometimes be successful and you can have a good outcome, more often than not, golfers are going to run out of gas before we find their best combo. You see, golfers only have a certain amount of swings every fitting before physical and mental fatigue set in and we start getting less than ideal results. So it's super critical as a club fitter to stay focused and understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and be able to hand your client things that have a reasonable chance of accomplishing that goal. If not, you're wasting a lot of time, you're wasting a lot of shots, and your golfers are going to get plain worn out. So we understand that we can't fit everybody here at Total Fit, which is why we wanted to share this information with you so you can get more out of your next fitting.